everybody. Thanks for being here. Just a couple of housekeeping matters before we get underway this afternoon. After Minister McQueen speaks, if you have questions, there's a microphone at the back, and we would ask everybody to go to that microphone to ask their question. We are live streaming this event, and it would also be for the benefit of those who are listening in through teleconference as well. So what we'll do is Minister McQueen will make some opening remarks. We'll open the floor for a few minutes for questions and answers, and then we'll go from there. So with that, I'd like to introduce to you Minister Diana McQueen.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Wayne, for that. I'm certainly very happy to see all of you here today, especially my friend and colleague, our Minister of Energy, Honourable Ken Hughes, is here in the room with us as well, and also local MLA for Southern Alberta, Pat Steer, is here as well. So thank you both for joining us, and indeed thank all of you for being here today. It's certainly, I am grateful, and I know that we're grateful to be here at this impressive facility to announce the important step forward in a new era of land use planning in Alberta. And before I get started, I really want to thank Bev Yee, our ADM, and the entire team. You guys have done an amazing job working on this plan, spending hours working with stakeholders, making sure that we're in communities, in people's, in the different stakeholders groups to make sure that we're listening and hearing what was important to them. So I really want to thank you, Bev, for your leadership on that and the entire team. So thank you very much. The fact that we are at this location today is testimony of the resilience shown after the floods. This center was able to recover quickly, and I'm proud of the efforts to restore this wonderful facility as has happened. Today we are announcing the release of the draft South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, the second plan under the land use framework. But most importantly, we're here today again to ask Albertans for their input, because we want Albertans to have a part in defining the future of this province. Southern Alberta is vibrant, prosperous, and growing very fast. But economic growth opportunities in agriculture, energy, forestry, and recreation and tourism do have impact on the land. About 45% of Albertans, or 1.6 million people, live in this beautiful region. Every day we see growth pressures in this part of the province. Growing population and expanding communities are exerting pressures in many ways. On municipalities for expansion and for more infrastructure, on our water supply, on sensitive lands, of which there are many in Southern Alberta, and for more recreation and tourism opportunities. Regional planning is a priority under Premier Redford's leadership and a key part of integrated resource management. Regional plans set the economic, environmental, and social outcomes Albertans expect from the development of our lands and natural resources. They are forward-thinking, comprehensive, and they are balanced. They hold legal authority and establish strict environmental limits for air, land, water, and biodiversity. And their development depends on continued engagement with Albertans throughout the entire process. Regional plans are certainly unique in Canada and throughout the world. On my recent mission to Europe, many countries, such as Sweden, were very impressed with the approach we are taking, and they are seeking additional information on this unique approach and have asked us to partner with them on that, and we're certainly happy to share our learnings. As we release this draft plan, we want to hear what Albertans have to say. We will be in 21 locations, primarily in Southern Alberta, from Calgary to Cardston, from Foremost to Fort Macleod. And we'll also visit 3 regions outside the province, Drumheller, Red Deer, and Edmonton. This draft plan was developed with input from many Albertans, including stakeholders, landowners, industry, First Nations, and certainly municipalities. And I want to thank everyone who has given us their valuable feedback to date. This draft report supports growth while considering environmental and social impacts. It provides clarity for land use management and priority uses, and gives certainty to industry and other users like recreationists about public land access and use within provincial parks and provincial recreation areas in the South Saskatchewan region. The draft regional plan contains 11 new legally protected areas, and these areas will be managed first to protect headwaters for water security and the preservation of biodiversity and ecosystems. These proposed measures will help us improve watershed management and flood mitigation measures and flood mapping. And they will help us conserve and protect our water supply and critical habitat for biodiversity. Another important measure will be maintaining intact native grasslands in southeast Alberta to protect critical species such as sage grouse. This new protection will continue to allow grazing as a responsible use of the land, and in addition, we will look forward to working with many other stakeholders, such as the Calgary Zoo, the Multi-Star, and private landowners to sustain such important species. Some of the key recommendations of the plan include increasing legally protected areas in the eastern slopes from 22 to 33%. This recommendation would add over 134,000 hectares of legislatively protected land in an area 2.5 times larger than Waterton National Park. 32 new and expanded conservation and recreation areas, 9 new or expanded provincial parks, 3 new or expanded provincial recreation areas, 9 new public land recreation areas. These new recreation areas will provide managed random camping areas as well. On top of that, the government is proposing over time as many as 1,000 new individual camping sites plus another 100 group sites. It is important that we provide a variety of recreational opportunities that will contribute to a healthy and satisfying way of life for a growing population in southern Alberta. The draft regional plan ensures access for public land for recreation. We also work with the off-highway vehicle community to develop trails in appropriate areas. 1,479 hectares will be added over time for recreation purposes. A major component of the draft deals with the Castle area, an area we heard a lot about during our initial consultations. A variety of conservation management approaches will be used in this area. A key recommendation is for the establishment of a wildland provincial park for the prime protection zone. A public land use zone for conservation purposes is proposed under the Public Lands Act in the adjacent lower valley areas of the Castle to be referred to as the Castle Conservation Area. The management intent of these areas will be maintaining biodiversity and headwaters protection. Forestry practices which support this management intent will be permitted in the Castle Conservation Area only. Enhanced forest practices may include winter-only operations, restricted access, and enhanced buffer zones in riparian areas. The draft South Saskatchewan Regional Plan also includes air quality, surface water quality, and biodiversity management frameworks. These frameworks are place-based and include environmental triggers and limits and also targets. The draft SSRP also addresses the agriculture and energy industry as well as property rights. For example, private landowners and freehold mineral owners will make decisions about how to use and manage their resources in a way that is consistent with existing provincial and municipal legislation. The draft plan does not change this or alter private property rights. Private lands contribute greatly to maintaining biodiversity and healthy ecosystems. Conservation is already central to the practices of many of our landowners. For example, heritage rangelands ensure native grasslands' ongoing protection, while continuing the traditional grazing approach that has stewarded these grasslands for so many years. And this plan will only be successful if we continue to build upon the history of shared stewardship among many groups and individuals in southern Alberta. Another component of the draft plan includes several strategies to assist the agricultural industry. There are many different ways for the agricultural industry to diversify, but private landowners will ultimately continue to make decisions about how to use and manage their land while maintaining consistency with provincial and municipal legislation. The plan encourages municipalities to maintain an agriculture land base by reducing the fragmentation and conversion of agriculture land. It supports a diverse, innovative, and value-added agriculture and agri-food sector. The plan encourages a business climate along with a complementary production and marketing approach that recognizes local, domestic, and international market opportunities for Alberta's agriculture, agri-food, and agri-products sectors. The draft plan also addresses the energy industry and establishes clear regional outcomes, providing direction to land use decision makers and the use of monitoring to support achievements of the outcomes while providing certainty for industry to access subsurface resources. The final South Saskatchewan Regional Plan will provide clear outcomes and management frameworks with thresholds to allow timely policy decisions by government and regulatory decisions by the Alberta Energy Regulator. To paraphrase our friends at the Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society, we are asking for help from all Albertans to plan our backyard. So help us plan this backyard. Remember, this is a draft document. We want to hear what you think about the draft regional plan for Southern Alberta and provide us with further direction. The plan looks far into our future in a province brimming with opportunity. We know we have unique challenges to go with many of our advantages, and we believe that it is essential to deal with our challenges today to create the opportunities for tomorrow and for future generations. It is time to take the draft South Saskatchewan Regional Plan to Albertans, and we hope to see many of you very soon. Thank you for being here today, and I certainly look forward to taking questions that you may have.
And just a reminder, if you could speak through the microphone in the back, please, so that folks live streaming can hear it. And we'll also take a few questions over the teleconference as well. So a couple of questions from the room first.
Hi, I'm Neil from CBC Radio. Wondering if you could explain in layman's terms, you used a lot of scientific and a lot of jargony language, but how would you explain this to a 12-year-old in one or two sentences?
That's a great question, because when I talk about this and my kids ask me, what is it actually is their land use planning about? It really is about the opportunity for us to take a long-term look at land use planning in Alberta to make sure that all of the things that are important to us from an economic, social, environmental, recreation, tourism, that we have the opportunity to do it all and have it all in Alberta. And that's what these regional plans do. They set out areas that we can make sure that all of those opportunities can exist today, but more importantly for future generations that we're planning with regards to land, with regards to water, with regards to places so that we can continue to have a strong economy in Alberta in all of the sectors that we have, but that we really look at conserving land, taking care of species, and making sure that we have places to play in Alberta as well. So it really is about broad thinking, long-term thinking, which doesn't happen a lot in governments where we look out 30, 50 years to plan for future generations. I think when you explain it to people, that's what is really important to them as well, that we're looking today, but we're also looking for the future generations of tomorrow.
Colette from the Calgary Herald. I'm hoping we can focus on the castle for a moment. It looks like you guys are only protecting about half of the area that was hoped to be protected. If you could just explain your rationale for why you've decided to do what you've done there.
Thanks, Colette. You know, we heard a lot during the consultation from many people about many aspects, making sure that we're protecting. The castle is certainly a very unique and special area of this province, but we've also heard from other stakeholders about the other opportunities they want to have in this region as well. And so for us, the protection of the headwaters and biodiversity is extremely important. And we think what we've done with the upper half protection takes care of that. And then in the bottom half that we can have some of the activities happening, but that they must support the headwaters protection and they must support biodiversity. So what we've tried to do is to listen to many voices from across Alberta, and particularly southern Alberta, and to be able to bring that together and to be able to try and manage and balance all that we heard. So while everybody may not be happy with 100% of the plan, what we've tried to do is really hear what people had to say and to really bring that together. And I think our staff have done an exceptional job on really bringing the voices to a live plan that we see here today.
Let's take, we have one question through the telephone system. Let's take that.
First question is from McClegg from Medicine Hat News. Your line is open.
Hello, sorry, the plan just came up online, so I'm just going to ask you about, is Wild Horse Plains part of the new conservation management plan? And if so, is there and generally, is there a definition for what these conservation management areas will look like?
I'm sorry, we really couldn't hear your question. I hate to ask you to repeat it again, but if you wouldn't mind, that'd be great.
No problem. Wild Horse Plains, is that included in the STRAP plan, the conservation management area? And also, what are these conservation management areas going to look like, practically speaking?
Do you want to answer that from a technical question? Sorry, we're having a hard time hearing you, but I think you're talking about the grasslands.
Wild Horse Plains,
Yes.
There's a proposed conservation management area. Is that included in this draft report?
Yes, the Wild Horse Plains is part of this grasslands zone that we had been referring to. And it's not called the Conservation Management Area. It's actually an area of grasslands that we want to sort of continue to be sustained. And there will be linear footprint planning in there, and that'll be a key activity.
And is that going to, what is that going to look like, practically speaking, as far as land use, whether it's energy use or exploration or ranching?
So we'll have to have all these people around the table, energy industry and ranchers and other people who have grazing leases in these areas, and talk about what linear footprint reduction might look like.
And that has yet to be defined, what that might look like?
I think we'll build off some work that's already been done in there called the Southeast Pilot Area. There's already been ranching community and energy industry around the table with government and municipalities, so we're going to build on that work.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Jamie from Global in Calgary. I'm just wondering, practically speaking, can you talk about sort of these more stricter rules that the logging companies in the Castle area, in those lower elevation areas, are going to have to do or change, the things that they're going to have to do to protect those headwaters?
Right. So as we move forward with the plans, with the logging companies, as they move forward with the changes when this plan is approved, they'll have to adapt their logging plans with our department, forestry department, to make sure that the headwaters and the biodiversity principles are first and foremost protected. So there'll be a lot of work that will have to happen there with the management plans to ensure that those goals that we're talking about with regards to headwaters protection and biodiversity are achieved through the new forest plans. So it may be the different type of harvesting, maybe times like in the winter, those kinds of things, but that'll be the next step after we come with a plan that is approved. And we'll be meeting with them and talking with them as we now have a draft to say, what is that? Start the conversation now as we go out to really start having the conversation, what does that look like? But that will be adopted in new plans that we work with the Forest Ministry and the forestry companies.
Hi, Minister McQueen. My name is Wendy Francis with the Yellowstone to Yukon Conservation Initiative, and just looking at the map and again getting back to the Castle area, and so many Albertans have expressed to you their support for protecting the Castle and for protecting all of the Castle, the lower elevations as well as the higher elevations. And from what I can see, it looks like the new protection is all what was prime protection at Zone 1 and Zone 2 under the existing integrated resource plan. And so it doesn't look to me like there's any real new protection in the Castle, and I just wonder if you could speak to that, please.
Do you want to speak to, Travis, the new piece there? And then I can add to it as well? Yeah.
Sure. I think
Or
that
Scott, sorry.
the big change there is we have legislated protection now. The Zone 1 is policy protection, so now it's legislated, so that gives it extra strength. The other thing is in the lower valley areas, they're essentially a conservation area, but allowing some forestry for an ecosystem management intent. So that is significant.
And just in terms of the change from policy to legislation, I understand the difference, but there's really no change in use in those higher elevations from what was there, what was allowed before under
Yeah,
policy.
for the most part, that's correct.
And I think, Wendy, with the other part of your question, the first part of your question, we did hear and have heard a lot from a number of Albertans with regards to the importance of the castle, but we've also heard about, from a number of Albertans as well, about finding that balance there. And so what we've looked at here is how do we make sure that we respond to both and that balance piece. So that's what we've tried to do, is because we have heard from numerous stakeholders on both sides of the issues. And so for us, legislating that, making sure that long-term that's protected through legislation is very important. And then changing how we do harvesting practices is also trying to find that balance as well. And so it's never easy when everybody wants something different. What we're trying to do is hear all of the voices, and I think this plan in that area reflects that. But it is a draft, and so this is the opportunity, and that's why we're here today to say to people, we've got a draft from the Regional Advisory Council, from what we heard from that, and now the third time going out and saying to Albertans, what's important to you? Here's what we've heard. Tell us what you think in areas we got it right and areas that may need to change. So it's important that people understand this is a draft plan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Paulette from the Herald again. Just wondering if you can explain what the protection is for the grasslands. It doesn't appear that there's any new protected areas, so if you could explain exactly how you're going to protect that area.
Do you want to? Sure. I can, but go ahead.
They want you to speak.
Thanks very much. I think what I had mentioned earlier, that intact grassland is intact today. And when we took a look at some of the measures that are in place today, they seem to be working. So what we're intending to do in that area then is commit to maintaining that intact grassland. The tools could be very different. We might, at the end of the day, after we've worked with stakeholders, have some smaller protected areas. We could have some voluntary conservation agreements with ranchers in the area. We could have other kinds of voluntary initiatives. So I think we don't want to, we didn't want to dictate what the tools were going to be, and that's what the stakeholders in that area said to us. They said they've been successful to date, and they would like to be able to ensure that more of the people that are working the land in that area could also emulate those kinds of stewardship practices. So our intent is to monitor that. Once we work with stakeholders and agree to a set of tools, we would monitor it. And if it's not working, then we would make some changes there. But our intent is to maintain that entire area of intact grassland.
Just as a follow-up, how might the federal protection order on the sage grouse affect some of your plans here?
Yeah, I think that when you look at the bigger picture of this, maintaining the habitat, the ecosystem as intact overall is going to help sage grouse, and that's the intent of critical habitat. When you look at the feds and how they define critical habitat, it's maintaining an area where, whether it's sage grouse or other species, can survive and thrive. And so our intent is maintain it as intact grassland, and therefore species living in that area should be able to thrive and survive. And again, we'll monitor to watch to see if there are potentially other factors that are impacting, and if we need to adjust, we would adjust.
I think just in addition to that, as well as the partnership that we've been with Multistar, but also the partnership with the Calgary Zoo that we've been working on with regards to the sage grouse in particular. We're very proud of the relationship with the Calgary Zoo that we have, and going forward, so together ourselves and the federal government are working with the Calgary Zoo. I mean, this is a very important species for us, and maintaining these native grasslands in whole are extremely important part of that.
Minister, you use the word balance, and I'm wondering if you could elaborate. What do you mean by balance? When it comes to the environment, and the concerns of environmentalists and the concerns of industry, which side of the debate do you see yourself on, and which side do you see this plan on?
Well, I'm on the side of Albertans, and so I guess that includes everyone, and that's the role that we have as ministers and Minister of ESRD, certainly. Albertans want, and we talk on many different areas, they want to have it all, and we are so lucky in this province we can have it all. It doesn't mean you can have it all everywhere, every time, and that's why I'm very proud of the land use planning that we're taking, because we do need to make sure that we have a strong economy in this province of all the sectors. We do need to make sure that we have growth for municipalities to grow. We need places for us to play, recreation. We need to make sure that we're setting aside lands for conservation, for important species, for biodiversity, and we need to make sure that as private landowners and Albertans, that all of those rights are still protected. So it's not easy. The balance doesn't mean it's the same for everything, but that we have to look at priorities and make sure as we're planning that we're planning for the long term for that, so that we can have all of those things in the right places at the right time. And it's challenging, I'll say that, but certainly I think the input that we've had from so many Albertans has been outstanding, because this truly is an Alberta plan. This really is about, when you start at the Regional Advisory Committee and they bring us a draft, and then we take what they've set out and people give us input onto that, and then we bring it forward, and then we'll bring this back to people. This really is an Alberta plan, and it really is about all of us wanting to make sure that we find the balance to have all of those things. So it's not either or, but it's about making sure all of those opportunities can exist in Alberta, and how do we make sure that we find that long-term for future generations as well.
Can you just describe, again, as you did to me, with me, just what exactly is a wildland park, just for those who might not know? Does it have the same restrictions as provincial parks, as a national park?
So a wildland park is probably very similar to a national park. It's our highest form of protection in Alberta under the Parks Act. So yeah, it's very low footprint activities are allowed in there. So low impact recreation, backcountry camping, those sorts of things, and no industrial activity, no new industrial activity.
So there will be zero of that in the eastern slopes of the Castle area. There's going to be...
yeah, in the wildland park that's been described, yes.
And is there any action there right now? You said that there might be some oil and gas activity happening at the moment. Will that be halted?
I don't believe there's any in the proposed wildland park.
Okay, so as soon as this were to come in to effect, then it would be under that band of guidelines?
Yes.
And just to add to that for you, Minister Hughes, Minister of Energy, has put a hold on any sales happening in the area until after the plan is in place, so that we know what areas will be the wildland park and those areas will be. So that's been put on hold by Energy right now, so that we don't have conflicts later on once we have a completed and approved plan.
Minister McQueen, my question is related to that. When this process started, many of the conservation groups actually asked that there be a hold on dispositions in the planning area until it could be decided what areas would be protected. My understanding is that did not happen, because this process has been going on for a number of years, as you know. So my question is, with respect to all of the new parks and park additions, are there dispositions in there that still could be developed because they exist now inside the new protected areas?
Yeah, so do you want to answer that? Okay, just so that we're clear on the protected areas.
So we do have an interim hold. Now that we've made this plan public, we do have a hold on these proposed conservation and recreation areas, so there won't be any new 10-year sales, am I correct?
Yes.
And existing activity has to be in accordance with the new management intent that's proposed.
So there could be new industrial development if there are tenures that currently exist before the hold was put on.
That's correct. Current
Yes.
government policy in wildland,
Yes.
in any park in the province, is if it's an existing petroleum and natural gas commitment, those commitments would be honored.
So we could still see new wells inside these new parks?
Potentially.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we have time for maybe one more question. Colette, we'll let you have the final question of the day.
I think the floods obviously took a lot of Albertans by surprise and maybe was a bit of an eye-opener for a lot of us. How has it changed your thoughts around the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan?
That's a great question, Colette, and we really appreciate it because it's been so devastating for southern Alberta, and Premier Redford has shown exceptional leadership with regards to the floods, taking action right away, and now the work that our task force is doing with regards to mitigation efforts. We were looking at floods because certainly there are floods in southern Alberta, but I think we've certainly looked at that a lot more, especially as we work with the task force. But as we've developed this South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, we've also looked on the other side of that, and that's on droughts. And so the plan really looks at how do we make sure that we're planning for droughts. If we're planning for floods, the task force is helping us. How do we look at mitigation efforts, but also looking at as this population grows over the next 25, 30, 50 years, especially when you have a closed basin, that we need to make sure we're planning smart, water conservation, how do we share water, those kinds of things. And that's part of the water conversation we've been having, an ongoing dialogue. So we've really, we were looking in the beginning with regards to drought and floods, but I think it's really just highlighted and the work we're doing as the task force moving forward on mitigation with regards to floods. It just highlights that as well. And so it's important that we look at both sides of those issues.
Great. Thanks for your time, everybody. Thank you for those that phoned in, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you very much.